What is up? Welcome into yet another edition of the Ben Garcia Show. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day. However you're watching, however you're following, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or for free on the iHeartRadio app. We appreciate you watching and listening. And today, if you're watching on YouTube, a platform that we have been growing tremendously, we have a credentialed media member, as he always says, in his Locked On Suns podcast, none other than Brendon Kleen. Brendon, how you doing today, man?
I'm great. We got basketball in July, which is not always the case. So we got Team USA, men's, women's. We got other NBA players out in other countries. I'm loving it.
You know, it's been crazy. How much of the Olympics have you been watching? I'm assuming a good amount.
I work from home, so honestly, it's just something to have on. So I'll watch as much as they'll give me.
So the USA basketball, you've been paying attention to all of that as well.
Absolutely.
So here, let me throw this at you right away. Before we jump into the Tyus Jones signing and what it means for the Phoenix Suns, the Matt Ishbia recruiting, what exactly all that as well means. Do we like that Matt Ishbia is necessarily a hands-on GM? Let me just ask you this. We have two guys, and the two best players, I saw a tweet basically, and it said, man, imagine Devin Booker and Kevin Durant on the same team as they were tearing it up on Team USA on Saturday.
Yeah.
These two guys are given clear roles. I understand the basketball casuals, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that because they probably just don't follow the game as close as we do. There's a reason why Devin Booker is playing. He's playing a clear, defined role. Kevin Durant as well, although he's only played that one singular game. Last year, the Phoenix Suns had basically no roles. It was a hodgepodge. You can blame that on Frank Vogel. Maybe that's something that Mike Budenholzer fixed. I'm not so bullish on that either. Do you believe that these roles that the Suns have, obviously Devin Booker's not going to be a role player, but he's being clearly asked to do something, and he's doing it like a good soldier. Kevin Durant is putting on the cape and is not afraid to be now the alpha to LeBron James's what is at times 1A, 1B. Do you think that translates to the regular season or not necessarily?
Here's where I think it does. I don't know if the roles will be the same. Obviously, Durant, maybe. Booker, probably not. I think that the best thing that can happen from playing a set style and embracing aspects of the game that you're expected to own and to dominate and to consistently be responsible for is that it ideally can help this team build chemistry. That's the part of it that I think I'm more excited by. Is it was just so random and unorganized, frankly, on both ends of the court last year. Different schemes, game to game, week to week, month to month, different rotations, all of it. Is if Booker, Durant, and Beal can come in with a coach that can give them those roles, communication among them, and then executing it on the court, that will go a really long way. And I think that this Team USA environment, it has to do that because everybody on this team is great. The only way they're going to win is to buckle down and actually play those roles, develop whatever chemistry they can over the course of, a month that they're going to have together in Paris. So that's where I would like to see the translation over is just what are we doing? How do we do it together? And how do we make ourselves the best thing we can be?
Do you think that that's something you can really, because in an Olympic setting, it's just different. Everyone on that team is a star. Everyone on that team is a superstar. But it does kind of give Devin Booker the clear role of here's what you have to do to be a successful role player in the NBA. Fair or not, international, FIBA rules, NBA or not, whatever. But if he's able to clearly communicate that to a Grayson Allen, to a Tyus Jones, to even a Bradley Beal at times, do you think that's something that people are actually, or players are actually receptive to, or not really?
I mean, I think that, well, one, I feel like the role that Book is playing it, and Durant, frankly, like it would be nice to see some of that stuff translate over. I've said since the season ended, I've said since the Big Three got put together, those guys are going to need to do things that superstars don't typically do. I don't think we saw enough of that last year for the full season, for full stretches of games. So just embracing that mentality, I think, can help, and having an opportunity to do a little bit of it is never a bad thing. I also think from like a leadership standpoint and a mentality standpoint and everything else, like Book being kind of the dirty work guy on this team, just like he was in 2021, I would think that at least kind of allows him to understand his teammates a little better, and get back to, okay, like this is hard. Here's what's like important about playing defense at the point of attack. And you're just some of those things that a lot of stars don't have to do. So it's hard to know, right? It's impossible to put ourselves in the heads of all these people and understand what's going to work and what won't work. But I would like to believe that a lot of these things are building the right kinds of habits and mentalities that this team just did not have last year, as they were just aimless searching for answers a lot of the time.
Let me ask you kind of a fun question here with Team USA basketball. And I didn't throw this to you when we pre-talked about it, and it really has nothing to do with the Suns, but
all good.
Here's kind of my thoughts on this. LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and Stephen Curry have way more to lose than to gain in this USA championship gold medal run. Now, do I think that it can legitimately work against a LeBron James GOAT conversation, or a Stephen Curry knock him down his legacy a couple of pegs, or, oh, Kevin Durant, he didn't work with another superstar? Do these three guys, and I really put it on these three guys because they're what I was calling the three horsemen, if you will, of this generation of basketball. They are those guys. It's always Curry, LeBron, and Kevin Durant, all in the same biggest time slots each and every Saturday and Sunday night. Do you think that there's actually something to lose here? If they lose these, if whatever it is, quarterfinals, semifinals, in the finals, do you think it's a scarlet letter, or at least a stain on their careers, that they were on? LeBron, it'll be his second team since he was on that 04 team that lost. And you can say, oh, he's not a winner. That would never happen with Michael Jordan. Do you think that's a real thing? I guess that is kind of Suns related as well because of Kevin Durant. But do you think that's an actual thing, that those guys could be seen as, oh, those are the guys that really screwed over USA basketball?
Yeah, look, I mean, I personally am not always like a legacy talk person, mostly because my mind just doesn't work that way. Like, I don't necessarily look at it and say, this player, if you add up their all NBAs or their total points or whatever, I just, to me, it's a feel of experiencing it when it was around. And then I guess, looking back historically, I got to lean on some of those accolades. But I personally look at NBA championships, all NBA stats, things like that, before I get to Team USA at all. Like you mentioned, LeBron is on that 2004 team. That's widely regarded as one of, the failure teams at what led to 2008 when Kobe got involved and everything else. But outside of LeBron, I'm looking at the roster now. I'm remembering that Dwayne Wade was involved. If you had asked me, I probably would have remembered that Tim Duncan was around. Besides that, I have no idea who was there. I didn't know Melo was there. I didn't really know that, Carlos Boozer. I know those guys aren't at the level that we ever talk about Carlos Boozer's legacy, but I guess my point is, like, we don't hold it against the individual people on that team. We kind of just end up saying Team USA failed. I would think, if anything, if they lose this year, it would probably be something of, should they have really gone so hard after Embiid? Blame that on Grant Hill or whoever. Did Steve Kerr orchestrate this whole thing right? It's his fault. I almost feel like if it happens, we don't know what the games would look like. If somebody shoots 2 of 25 and they look awful, we probably would blame it on them. But hypothetically, I kind of look at it like, in 2004, it became this whole structural issue. I think that's what we would see again, and it would be, oh, the world's gotten better, and Team USA developmentally has a problem with AAU. Like, it kind of, that's where I think the conversation would go. So if it's Steph, Curry, LeBron, I think it's probably going to be eliminated from their history like 5 years from now.
That's pretty interesting. I just find it at times, whether it's Jordan fanboys or Curry fanboys or whatever it is, they'll find any reason to hate someone. So I just, I put that out there a couple weeks on social media, and people did not agree with me, which I understand. It was the middle of July, and what we're trying to do is just to be interesting. And what else is interesting? We'll pivot to this. Tyus Jones, now with Phoenix Sun. I've seen your I've seen you talk about it on your channel, Locked On Suns. I've talked about it on my channel. How much better are the Phoenix Suns? Are they championship contender? That's the golden question. That's all anyone cares about. Is team making it to the first or second round? That's not something anyone is even worried about. Are they a legitimate championship contender? And how much better are they? Because you have to remember, this is a team that had championship aspirations, but didn't win a single playoff game. That's how far away they were. They didn't just fail. They told their parents they were going to get an A on the test and got an F. They didn't even pass. That's how bad it was. How much better are they with Tyus Jones? Is it considerably? Is it marginally? Where's it at for you?
Yeah, I guess I don't look at it as exactly because of Tyus, but if you take the whole offseason in total, right? I think it did two things. One of them has to do with the on-court product. One of them has to do with the hypothetical future on-court product. I think that they raised their floor, especially as a regular season team, by a lot. Last year, the buzzword from James Jones was mid-prime veterans, the names that most Suns fans have probably already flushed down their memory. Keita Bates-Diop, Jordan Goodwin, Chimezie Metu, Yuta Watanabe, guys that had done well on bad teams and needed an opportunity to prove it on a good team. Well, none of them proved it. They all ended up out of the rotation or on other teams by the end of the season. So what the Suns did, I think, smartly this year is they went out and got vets to fill those positions. Before Tyus, they already were doing that. Mason Plumlee, Monte Morris, obviously keeping Royce O'Neal. You could trace that back to February as a step toward this whole thing in the first place. Retain Josh Okogie, retain Damian Lee, all veteran players. Bol probably the only exception to that, and I think most Suns fans would have said, you got to keep him, so no one would have argued there. And then the other thing that they did with this offseason that gets us a little bit ahead of ourselves, but I think it's part of what the Tyus move will allow them to do is they manufactured basically flexibility that the CBA, the second apron, all these, monsters circulating in the NBA world that are scaring all these teams. They created flexibility without basically having it. They have all these contracts now, whether you're talking about Nurkic, O'Neal, Allen, Okogie, that they can trade. They kept their first-round pick out 7 years from now instead of just throwing it at the first thing that they could. And I think the reason that connects to the Tyus Jones signing is they have options on the court now and depth in the rotation where if they realize, hey, having a point guard, yes, it's going to make us smaller, all these questions remain, but on the whole, that's actually the best version of our team. Okay, what do we do from there? Does that change the type of center that we might want to have? Does that change maybe we can afford to have more defensive guys because the ball is in these players' hands more and he can afford to be out there? Whatever the observations are going to be as they stack this thing up over the first couple months, they already had the flexibility to make those moves. Tyus Jones didn't really change that, but what he did is he created this window where now they have another piece, another really good player to maneuver any direction that they want to without sacrificing crap. Okay, yeah, we made that trade, but we just lost a rotation player. Grayson Allen is really good. We can't just give him up for something else because we need him. Well, maybe they don't need him now as much or somebody like him because they were able to get a steal in Tyus Jones who they probably never thought they would get.
Yeah, the Tyus Jones thing, you mentioned on your show, you'd basically said, I have to apologize. I didn't think this was ever possible. I don't think you should apologize. I don't think anyone thought Tyus Jones is a possibility. Anytime someone brought it up, it was someone that was probably little uneducated in how salaries work and just how hamstrung the Phoenix Suns were. A lot of this credit has to go to Matt Ishbia. And I'll ask you this. It's a double-edged sword. We talked about it today on the radio, The Drive with Jody Ayler. I'm the producer on that show. We were talking about it earlier today. And we were basically spitballing around. It's kind of a double-edged sword, right? You get the too involved owner. It can be an issue. We all love it right now because it seems like he was the guy really full steam ahead trying to get Tyus Jones. But is it a little concerning that Matt Ishbia, there wasn't any word of James Jones going after this guy. It was Budenholzer. It was Matt Ishbia. It was Josh Barlstein. I mean, does it worry you that Matt Ishbia still seems to be a little too hands-on, even if he's ready to spend all of his money at any waking moment he can?
Worry is the right word, I think, because it's not always a bad thing to have a very involved owner. And most of what I've ever heard from the most plugged in people across any sport is the dirty secret of all of this is almost every single one of these owners is pretty involved. It's just a matter of how much, how public they are about it, and everything else. So it doesn't worry me in a vacuum to say Matt Ishbia is the final call and maybe the first call on all these things until it is, right? The minute he screws something up, we'll all say, yeah, we're worried, that sucks. Why did you do it that way? How could you be the meddlesome guy you are? You're so bad at this. But until then, getting Kevin Durant, I don't think most Suns fans are going to complain about. The Beal thing, I think we'll hit on in a moment, and you could go a bunch of directions on if that was the right move. But spending a lot, committing to the franchise, these are all things that you want to do. And if the cost of that is, hey, the guy's going to also want to have a major say in all of it, I guess that's just kind of what comes with the territory. But you're absolutely right. With all due respect, I think James Jones has done a very good job resetting all of this. Probably underrated among Suns fans overall, but I don't think we should think of him as the final decision maker on any of this. If you want to criticize moves that get made, it should be Ishbia. And I guess likewise, if you want to congratulate the team for making some good move, probably give that to him too. But this is a Matt Ishbia show for sure.
But James Jones is kind of a lame duck guy. And I would agree with you. I think for most part, he has done a good job. But you look at the general manager, you're always going to blame that. It's one of the reasons why I believe they haven't gotten rid of him, is because I believe Matt Ishbia looks at James Jones and says, this guy just does whatever we say. What's the difference? The other guy might not do it. That's always been the interesting thing with James Jones. Pivoting over to the Bradley Beal thing, I've been called every name in the book. I feel like, I know you'd mentioned, someone you had on your show had mentioned this months ago. I'd also mentioned it after the Sacramento Kings game. I can't remember exactly when it was. When Malik Monk just went nuclear on the Phoenix Suns. The Suns still won that game, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. I went on the air the next day, and I had said, that's Bradley Beal's role. That's Bradley Beal's role, is Malik Monk. Bradley Beal's never been a part of a winning culture, including this year. They were not a winning culture. He doesn't really know how to win outside of scoring the basketball. And I love Bradley Beal. He's one of my favorite players in the NBA, not on the Phoenix Suns when he wasn't here. I was ecstatic when they got him. But it's clearly not working. I don't know if you saw what I put out there. I talked about it on Saturday on Fox Sports 910. I'd basically mentioned I watched it. It didn't work. Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, it's too much redundancy with 5 guys on the floor sharing one basketball. It's important in this business to admit when you're wrong. I thought it was going to work swimmingly. I thought you double down on the mid-range assassins. You throw more firepower at it. Teams aren't going to be able to keep up. And I realized a month into the season, that was wrong. You add Tyus Jones to that mix, who has a clear role, which we talked about earlier. A facilitator. A guy that can actually get Kevin Durant and Devin Booker involved. If you would ask me, I think Tyus Jones is a better version of Chris Paul in his final season with the Phoenix Suns. He knows exactly what he is. He's a catch-and-shoot guy. He's a better shooter than Chris Paul. You move Bradley Beal to the bench, and I understand the argument has always been, well, you're paying him $50 million. Brendon, I don't care. I don't care what they're paying him. He's still going to make $50 million on the bench, and if he doesn't like it, buddy, waive your no-trade clause. See what's out there. It's going to be nothing. The best version of this team is all I've ever been interested in, and I believe the best version of this team is a combination of Bradley Beal going to the bench. I understand Tyus Jones is smaller than Bradley Beal, but then you insert Royce O'Neal, is a little bit bigger, a little bit thicker than Bradley Beal, definitely the better defender. And you're able to put people in places where they're at their best to succeed. Takes the pressure off of Bradley Beal, who's still going to play 30 minutes a night, 35 minutes a night, might still close some games as well, most games when they need a bucket. And he can just be Wizards Bradley Beal off the bench. I know it won't happen. I'm not that naive. I'm saying that this is the best version of the Phoenix Suns. Am I crazy?
No. If we're kind of agreeing that the actual practical Coach Bud sits Beal down in his office and tries to have that conversation with him is not realistic, then I can connect with elements of the argument you're making. But you said Wizards Bradley Beal, and then earlier you said too much overlap. So, one, there's different eras of Wizards Bradley Beal. The guy's been in the league a long time, and what he was asked to do on those teams has been very different. It's a long time ago. He's had a lot of injuries since then. It's not going to be one-to-one. But I do look at the John Wall Wizards years, the first 4 seasons of Beal's career, let's say. That guy, I would push back and tell you, did do what was necessary to play within a team that almost made the conference finals one year. And getting to a new version of that type of Bradley Beal, I think would reduce the overlap you're talking about, right? And that's the mission for him. Because, even the idea of him being just a scorer off the bench, that's not, really that valuable still for a team that has so much offense, right? Part of Malik Monk's a good example. He's very valuable, but it's kind of more of the same over there too, right? So this idea of Bradley Beal coming in and getting buckets, well, they're going to have no short supply of buckets between Grayson Allen already being on this roster and the 2 superstars at the top of this whole thing. So no matter what happens, where anybody's playing in the rotation or what position or any of it, these 3 guys being together, for them to fit, they're going to have to sacrifice and evolve their games, period. They're going to have to do things that superstar players don't always do, that they may not love to do. And that's going to be the only chance they have to win a championship. Kevin Durant, rebound and protect the rim more than maybe is comfortable for you. Devin Booker, guard wings on the ball like you did at times in the postseason in the past. Bradley Beal, take more threes, cut, play off the ball as a scorer. Also, guard player. We saw him guard Zion last year. There's going to be more of that coming, right? And all of you guys, please communicate and try to lead this whole thing. And, some team defense, some efficient low turnover basketball would be nice on top of it, right? That's the mission no matter what any of the rest of it looks like. And so I just kind of don't think that Beal going to the bench really solves those problems as much as people think. That's the other reason besides, hey, he's never going to agree to it, that makes me feel like it wouldn't be a fix.
That's totally fair. Do you think we're even negotiating this if he's not a $50 million a year man? Or do you think if he's a $10 million a year man, are we saying, yeah, get to the bench? This fits better. Is it just clearly the money? Which I understand.
He's overpaid, right? I think we all would agree he's older, injury prone. The contract he got at the time was unnecessary. They extended him way before they needed to for way more than they needed to in Washington. But there's no world where he's a $10 million player, right? If he's properly paid in a vacuum, what would we say? 30? 40? That's fair. 35? 30. 30. Okay. That's good starter Drew Holiday money or so, right? Jarek White money. That's kind of the range we're talking at that point. Maybe a guy like that could come off of the bench, but again, you would still be asking those types of players to play more like Derek White and Drew Holiday, right? Which is kind of what I'm saying that Beal needs to embrace, and that's where I come down.
You've mentioned embrace. You've mentioned Beal needs to shoot more threes. Kevin Durant needs to rebound the ball better. Little stat for you. Kevin Durant had 0 offensive rebounds in that full series against the Minnesota Timberwolves. So it's all these guys. Devin Booker's got to shoot a little bit better from 3. We're not asking for 5 percentage points better, but he's always been a worse 3-point shooter than you think every year. How I guess it's kind of hard because they didn't respect Frank Vogel. How much belief do you have in Mike Budenholzer to actually get these guys to teach an old dog new tricks, and they're going to do it, whether it's KD rebounding the basketball, where it's Bradley Beal taking more threes, where it's Kevin Durant, for God's sake, take more threes, or whatever it is for Devin Booker. How confident are you that Mike Budenholzer can do that?
Well, I think some of those things are more realistic than others, right? The point of the old dog new tricks side of it with Durant, he's probably not going to become a gunner from deep. That's just not going to happen. But the other two can. Booker and Beal can do that a little bit more, having, Some more rotation options that are willing and able shooters would be nice and will be nice. I think that the main thing Bud will do is just create structure for this whole environment. Have a real system on both sides of the floor. I've even talked about how the rotation and the roster being a little bit more clear will be beneficial on the court when it comes to, I mean, we talked about it with the superstars. I think the same will be true for role players. Whereas I just think there was a lot of uncertainty when guys got out there last year of like, how do I earn minutes? Right? And I don't think that question will be facing a Monte Morris this year or a Royce O'Neal or a Grayson Allen this year. So I think that it'll just be a little bit more stable, structured, and clear as to how they're going to play, what everybody's job is to achieve that, and everything else. But yeah, some of the shot selection stuff, some of the paint concerns overall, scoring at the rim, defending the rim, rebounding, that's going to be buy-in, and I don't fully know I don't know the answer to that question until we kind of see it. I think I feel better about Bud, given his track record in multiple situations with a bunch of different types of players over more years than Vogel to achieve that. But, I mean, I'm just sort of, I guess, being optimistic. I don't have a lot of evidence. I haven't interviewed, Al Horford in depth about Mike Budenholzer by any means or something. So, I mean, your guess is as good as mine on that part of it.
Yeah, it's just interesting to get the different perspectives because I think Mike Budenholzer clearly has a track record with getting more out of less. I think he was clearly, as we've seen now, the scapegoat of that Milwaukee Bucks team. I bet you if you were asked Milwaukee Bucks fans, they definitely pick Mike Budenholzer over Doc Rivers at this point. You mentioned the size, or at least you kind of alluded to the size of the Phoenix Suns. That is now the glaring issue, which kind of leads me to my next point. My issue for the Phoenix Suns was never that they needed a point guard. Sure, it'd be nice, but I'd rather them allocate their very minimal resources to the wing position. They didn't Ryan Dunn. It's early, but it looks like he shoots the basketball about as well as I do. Defensively, he's a juggernaut. Offensively, at times, it looks like he's building the house with all those bricks. And then whether it's Ryan Dunn, who clearly doesn't look like right now, although I advocated for him, a clear playoff rotational piece that I'm not going to blame the Suns for. Late first round guy, developmental guy, that's going to happen. They also have the issue on the wing still, at least until Ryan Dunn figures it out. And then the size issue. They're small, which is again, the reason why I alluded to Beal go to the bench, get a little bit bigger, a little bit thicker with Royce O'Neal, because on this team, every pound and every inch counts. Here's my only suggestion that you've kind of alluded to it earlier when we were talking. Grayson Allen, it seems like the odd man out. A little too much redundancy. Sure, he shoots really well from three, but can he replicate that kind of season? Potentially he can. He obviously benefited from playing with 3 stars and getting a lot of open shots. But here's my thing. Can you package a Grayson Allen to fix the wing issue, i.e. a Dorian Finney-Smith, which I'm not this nuts Suns fan. I'm not out here packaging a first-round pick and Yousef Nurkic and think I'm getting Walker Kessler. I live in the real world. And so when it comes to Grayson Allen, is he the odd man out? Could you get a Dorian Finney-Smith for him? Could you get any viable wing player that adds depth, that adds length, and that adds a little bit of size to this team that is now staring at their biggest glaring weakness, size?
Both Grayson Allen and Yousef Nurkic, I mean, T-minus, a month until we see an article where those 2 guys' names are in trade rumors? I mean, that's just where this is headed. And it's, again, it comes back to the first thing I said about part of what Tyus Jones' acquisition does for this team. He's not the same exact player as Grayson Allen, but you have some options at your disposal about how you can build your roster out going forward and who you can move in order to get there. And Grayson Allen is obviously the guy. I mean, I think the thing that the way that the offseason has played out really did for the Suns is it's not so much that they're small because they have too many players of the same position. It's that all of their good players are the same position, right? So you would be crazy to be force-feeding a Josh Okogie or a Ryan Dunn a bunch of minutes and giving Monte Morris or Tyus Jones or Grayson Allen a bunch of DNPs. Like, that just, you want to put your best players on the court. But all your best players are 6'5" or under now, outside of, Durant and O'Neal and Nurkic, basically, and Plumlee. So you have to be exploring trades to turn one of those pieces into somebody that's somewhere in that 6'6" to 6'9" range who can ideally play a little bit on both sides of the floor. I don't know who that's going to be. I don't know what that's going to look like. That 2031 pick is very valuable in my opinion, especially if you're willing to go pretty slim on the protections for it. Nurkic is effectively an expiring contract. If we get to this year's deadline, whoever's acquiring him, the next year will be his last on this deal. And then Allen, to me, is like a very valuable player, given that he's paid pretty appropriately. He's very good on good teams. We've seen that in multiple stops now. I think I would bet one of the two of those guys at least is not on this roster by March 1st. And this roster, who's starting, who's closing, is all an open question until that gets done.
Yeah, this will be my final question to you. Brendon Kleen of the Locked On Podcast joining me on the Ben Garcia Show today. What is the correct expectation for the Suns this year? Is it championship or bust? Because a championship or bust season is the worst way to view any season at all. I thought this was going to be the most fun year for me to watch the Phoenix Suns. And at times I was wondering if I could run a play better than they could. It was so disjointed and unorganized. It wasn't fun. They weren't likable. Is the expectation now with Tyus Jones, who I don't think can be understated, is a really, really good piece and a guy that both you and I thought were never going to be here. My belief is they're a sneaky championship contender. If things break their way, maybe, right? I still think the Celtics could probably lock those guys up. But if things could break their way, but you could say that about anyone. But it is especially keen because you have guys like Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal. It's a bunch of stars on a team that if they get hot, it's just hard to stop that freight train. What do you think are the right expectations for this team? Is it just ride it out, which is tough to do with a bunch of guys who we're not sure if we even like? Where are you at with that?
Look, so this week, a lot of the sports books released their over-under win totals. The Suns are at 46.5 basically everywhere. I would take the over there. I think that despite them being hurt and disjointed and all the things you just said this past season, they still got the 6th seed. They still won 49 games. And given how much they did leave on the table, which you can't gift them in hindsight, but like that was real, they should have won even more games than that, even with the injuries. I think it's a no-brainer that they should win 47, 48 games at least, give themselves a good shot to be in that top 6. I think you have to put Boston at the top of the pack, given that they literally ran almost their entire roster down from top to bottom back for a season that they just absolutely destroyed the league in. Behind that, though, I look at almost every other team that could consider itself a title contender to almost be in one tier together. Right? Philly, New York in the East, Milwaukee maybe, however far you want to go down there. And then in the West, some of the teams you listed off, Denver, Minnesota, Oklahoma City, Dallas, the Suns. Like, I struggled. I mean, you can make a case. Obviously, we all can debate it, but I don't think one of them is clear-cut ahead of anybody else. The Suns probably down near the bottom of that pack, but still in it, in my opinion. They have a chance to win a championship, probably based on making the move I just laid out in the last comment. But that's where I'm at. I think that they have the goods if they nail everything. Like you said, you could say that about everybody, but I mean, you can't say that about the Rockets, right? Like, not everybody. So they're there. But yeah, this is championship or bust. If those things don't play out, if they can't find the move that they need to make, if there's more injuries and Bud doesn't really make a huge difference in terms of the organization and structure of all of this, one of these three guys is very likely to be moved. I think how do you run it back again if they underachieve one more time? Maybe there's some in between where they have a competitive conference finals and that convinces everybody to run it back, but the stakes are that high. It isn't a great place to be, but it's the reality.
I lied really quickly. Would you have ran it back with this team? after the season they just had, let's say they didn't get tied just at the beginning of the offseason, would you have ran it back? Because I was a clear proponent of you got to get off this while you still can. It's a sinking ship. And honestly, I'm off this ship now because I was crazy like we all were after getting swept. But at one point I was, do you trade Devin Booker and just really set this? I understand that's crazy now. I was in fantasy land. I was nuts. But would you have ran it back with this team?
I would have because
Beal, Katie, and
the big three, right? Basically,
yeah.
Keep them. I mean,
that is the team.
Yeah, exactly. I would have because I mean it's not a sexy answer, but like they wouldn't have been able to get anything close to a real return back. So the options were effectively run back that big three or burn the team to the ground and reset. I mean, there's really no in between, and so it just like you said a few minutes ago, you're not going to get much for Beal with a no trade clause. Durant, you could get something in return for, but it's going to be less than what you just gave up a year ago, which I think just the vibe of that is a little rough to stomach if you're Matt Ishbia. And Devin Booker, if you trade him, then you're restarting, you're tanking. So that's kind of why I just looked at it and hardly did any content around the idea of doing any of those deals because it just felt so far-fetched. But 2 years of seeing it and it not working at all, you kind of be crazy to do it a third time. So that's what's kind of facing them this year is if you ask me again and it goes similarly a year from now, I think I would have to say yes.
Brendon Kleen, way too nice with this time. I think I told him 20 minutes. My timer's right. We're at 37 minutes, which just shows how much of the character that I have. Much more level-headed. Didn't do the clickbait content like I did and said trade the farm, get rid of everyone, sell Devin Booker's dog as well. But, okay, we can't all be as smart as you at times. Anyways, Brendon Kleen, Locked On Suns. I appreciate you joining me, man. You were way too courteous and nice with your time. I would have cut me off 15 minutes ago, but I appreciate it. Thank you, man.
Anytime.
Brendon Kleen, Locked On Suns. Thank you for joining me. This has been the Ben Garcia Show. And until next time, I will see you guys next time.